And today, this is the first for Entrepreneur Journey. We have a returning guest, Shawn Khorrami, and he is a expert at scaling businesses and a serial entrepreneur. And he had so much value to give last time that I said, we've just got to get him back on the show. So I can't wait for this. Without further ado, I'm going to dive in. Shawn, for those that didn't watch the first interview, kind of tell everybody who you are.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. And I'm glad to be the first return guest. Hopefully I'll be returning more because I enjoyed last time we were together.
Nice.
So I'm a serial entrepreneur. I started more than a dozen businesses from the ground up, with me being employee one, and growing them to 7, 8, 9-figure businesses. Not every one of them. I've had plenty of failures along the way, but I started very early on. I'll even go back to when I was a kid. So when I was a kid, my dad had his own business, and we're immigrants. We're from Iran. And in Iran, my dad had a construction business. In any developing country, construction is a big deal. And so it was a thriving business at the time. And in what would be probably not acceptable in today's world, my dad would take me to construction sites as a 7-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old. And you can imagine, going to a place like that and then being able to climb on these construction equipment and things like that was a big deal to me. I was just mesmerized. And from then on, from as long as I can have memories, right, I thought I would go have my own construction business just like my dad, right? And that's what I would do. I would do construction. It would be my own business. So that's where it started. We moved to the US. My dad was never really put together that construction business in the same way. And you can imagine a person moving from one country to another, all the way across the globe, different language, different economy, different political system, all of those things, totally different. So, I mean, it's tough. People don't really think about that. And I didn't really think about it until I was much older, about what a challenge that is and what a sacrifice it is that people make all the time. But anyway, we came over to the US, and this construction thing was in my head the whole time. My dad gets his hands on a couple of small income properties. And he was terrible at managing them. He thought he would be good at it. He was not good at it. It was giving him a very tough time. At the time, professional management, bringing that in didn't make really sense. Maybe in today's world it does, but back then it didn't. So out of just the desire to help my dad, I put together a system. I put together a very basic database program. That was when personal computers were first getting into homes. And this really worked for my dad. My dad says to me, hey, I have other friends that are in the same boat as me. Can you help them too? And that's how it began, right? And a lot of times, right, it was quite by accident. It was not what I thought I was going to be doing, right? I thought I was into construction. Well, this was a little related. There was some maintenance to do on these properties, but I mean, it wasn't construction. And I thought I'd have my own business, but not in this, and certainly not when I was 16, because in my head, my whole thing was going to school. I was very into formal education, still am. Even though I will tell you, as I've grown older, I know for a fact a formal education is not only no guarantee, but not even a requirement to be successful in life or in business. But for me, it made a lot of sense because I like that kind of cramming of information into my head. And I like that getting an overview, even if it's theoretical, of how something works. So I went to school. I got degrees in mathematics, in computer science, in economics. I got a law degree. I've had formal education, which means not a degree, but substantial coursework in marketing, sales, accounting. And all of that, when you put it kind of together, it's kind of the backbone of how the skills you need to sort of run a business, right? In very basic terms. And so that's what I've done my whole life. I sort of, I get into a business and then from there grow other businesses. And so, like, I'll see some process. I'm an assembly line guy. I'll see some process and I'll say, that we can do better. And then doing that better becomes a business, either because it costs so much to do it better that I really need to market it out somewhere else, or because it just makes sense. And so I've marketed to my competitors, different processes that I've come up with. And those businesses have become bigger than the business that gave me the process to begin with. So over time, what happened was, I tell this story. Family came to me, and friends of family, and friends of friends, either because of something I did well, and they were having some sort of an issue with, like, they were growing too fast and they didn't have the infrastructure, or because of some crisis I was in, right? Because they said, you got through that crisis, how do I do it? Because I'm in trouble in that same way. I'm seeing the same crisis. And so from there grew a lot of business ventures. And what I noticed was I love doing that. And so now what I do, this is what it all transformed into, is I run multiple different businesses. But among those things, what I do is I help SMBs, small and medium-sized businesses, and I partner with them. So we do it through education, consultation, and investment is the way I talk about it. But we really partner with businesses, and we have different products that we put out. And from there, what we want to do once we decide to partner with a business is to start small, work together, see results, and then grow from there into a more robust relationship, which is what my real sweet spot is.
Nice.
In doing. So
you said small businesses. Is there particular types of industries that you typically work with?
I like, obviously I like consumer goods, but I've worked across a lot of different things. So everything from food products to apparel. Geez, apparel is a big deal, because I always tell people I have more relatives that have apparel businesses than I have relatives. It's just people love doing that business. It's a tough business. They don't realize how tough it is a lot of times. But accessories, apparel, food products, different types of consumer products. And what we really concentrate on is creating a direct-to-consumer relationship. And it'll lead into some of the stuff we're going to talk about in a little bit, but creating that direct-to-consumer relationship. So you may have a company that has a distributor network, and you're having all these wholesale. You're basically wholesaling all your stuff, and your products are getting into consumers' hands. Consumers may recognize your products, right? But they have no relationship with you. Sort of like how Nike used to be, right? You'd go to Foot Locker to buy a Nike product. You wouldn't go to Nike itself. Today you do. So that relationship, creating that relationship for small and medium-sized businesses, is really what we like doing.
Nice. I have another question for you, because you are a serial entrepreneur, and we had another guest on the show, and it's kind of carrying over from that question. He tended his perspective on it was, once you create someone been successful and know how to get to 6 figures, 7 figures, etc., it's easier to repeat. Once you do it once, you know the processes and systems to repeat it. Would you agree with that?
The rinse and repeat.
Yes.
Yeah. I do. You also see, I do agree with that. Let's in terms of yes or no. It's a little bit more detailed than that, though, right? You also get, not only do you develop some of those skills that you need. So when I was talking about, like, I started my business, a lot of my businesses as employee one. I ran and I've run every single department within those businesses. And those businesses, when they grow to be 9 figures, they have a pretty robust number of departments, right? So you have your marketing, you have your sales separated out. This is not, a lot of times when you're small, your marketing and sales is one, but then that separates out all of your operations, your accounting, your, legal, everything that goes, product development, customer service, quality assurance, IT, all of those things. I've run all of those departments within my companies. So you develop some level of skill for those things. You've probably at that point also put together some sort of leadership, have an appreciation of having leadership, have an appreciation of, even though you're kind of this type A personality running this company, that the appreciation of the team, how that works and how important it is. There's no way you're going to succeed without having a proper team. And I'm talking, people talk leadership, and it's incredibly important, leadership, but the whole team, all the way down, to the warehouse workers, right? Having a process, making sure all of that stuff is working. You develop those skills. You also, during that time, on kind of the other side of it, is you get some bumps and bruises. You see some bad times. You see some tough challenges. You deal with crises. You are able to see them coming better. And also when they do come, right? Sometimes you're able to avoid them because of those skills that you have. But when they do come, also, you're able to keep a little bit calmer and be able to lead your team through that, because you have those bumps and bruises. So
weather the storm
for a variety of ways. I agree with that.
Okay, awesome. Oh, so I know you have a book coming out. We skipped the whole getting to know you questions. Let's go back to that because I'm always interested in these little things. So first of all, tell me what your favorite restaurant is in LA, since you live in that area.
In LA. Okay, so one of the businesses, this is what I did, and it'll lead to my answer to that question.
Okay.
Everything with me, it takes a while. Everything with me is a story. So you see restaurants fail all the time, and they have a huge failure rate. And my theory on this always was, the reason they fail so much is that people get into them for the wrong reasons. So somebody will say, I'm really into cooking, and they'll get into that. Or I'm a big foodie, and then they'll go open a restaurant. Or, they'll have all these reasons. None of them is really a business reason, right? Or a business-like approach. So what I thought was, maybe the failure rate is that kind of thinking that ends up feeding a lot of those failures, and not so much that it's this really risky, terrible business, because that's what people warn you about. Oh, geez, this and that. So I decided that I'm going to open up my own restaurants, right? And then but I went about it very business-like. So I went and partnered up with a proper restaurant manager, all this stuff, and put together the right team. And we went and put together a restaurant. It became a little small chain of restaurants.
Nice.
And by the way, I'm no longer invested in it, but that restaurant chain has gone on, is wildly successful.
Nice.
I beyond what I thought. But it's the first one that we opened was the Factory Kitchen. It's out in downtown LA. The first year we opened, we won one of the best dishes of the year from the LA Times. It was just really exciting, and the business took off. It just hugely crowded. To this day, it's hard to get into that place.
Nice.
And I love that restaurant, not only because I helped start it, but also it's a fantastic place to be in. The food is great, the environment is great, and it's run just beautifully. So there you go. That's my answer.
Well,
long answer.
Well, I'm going to continue with that question a little bit, because not that we're about restaurants or anything like that. Just because I've always thought about this as far as restaurants. How important is the chef hire? The executive chef.
I think it's very important, but I wouldn't necessarily think you need a celebrity chef. Okay. We didn't get one. We got a very good chef. He was excellent. Brought him over from Northern California. He agreed to come, and he was not very well known, but we thought he was a fantastic guy. And that dish, the dish that won was a pesto dish that he makes that is specific to him. He has a unique way of making it. And so, ultimately, when that happened, that was obviously a big deal. But it is incredibly important because not only because he knew exactly what to do with, like, how to make certain types of food. He was very good with helping us on the menu, and a lot of chefs a lot of times are not. He was very good with the menu, and the menu is incredibly important in different ways than a lot of people think. It's not just what people like, it's also how you're going to make money out of that menu, right? So we had an Italian restaurant. How many meats are we going to have there? Because that's your low profit item. How many pastas are we going to have in there? How many, what are you going to do with flatbreads and things like that? What kinds of salads? The makeup of that is incredibly important. So he was very, very good with that. And he was also excellent at running the kitchen, running the staff. So those things are incredibly important.
Nice. Last question on the restaurant front. So do you think that's why steakhouses are now charging, most of them are charging like $80 for a steak? Because of the margins?
Okay, first of all, I've told this to a lot of my friends. You haven't been to my house yet, but hopefully when you visit in California, you'll come over. I make the best steak there is. Bar none. If you come to my house, you will agree.
Okay. Sounds like an invite.
I will force you to agree. Yeah, it is. I invite you to judge that. However, so steakhouses, one is, it is absolutely that. It's that you're having those meats and everything are low profit a lot of times, especially when you don't have the other items on the menu that are real popular. So with an Italian restaurant, you can afford to have, a couple of fish, a couple of meats, and then have this wide array of things. But it's also difficult running a steakhouse. A steak, I always say, like, making that, mass producing it like that for like, a larger group of people, like a restaurant worth of people, it's tough because you have to do it just right, get it out just right, at the right temperature, at the right time, in front of the customer, or it's not going to taste right. And a lot of your customers expect a lot, and they should. So that's a one type of restaurant I would hate to get into, because I always saw it as, geez, man, that's some tough work they're doing.
Yeah, and I imagine somebody's interpretation of medium rare is different than someone else's interpretation of medium rare as well. So
yeah, and then doing the steak right, where the outside is cooked properly, where you have the right level, because spicing the steak, you're really spicing the outside and spicing that properly with the right spices, and then making sure the inside is cooked right, not overcooked, not undercooked. What do you do so it's not bloody, it's not leaking blood type of thing. There's a lot. There's a lot to it, and I don't envy the job those guys do.
Well, that was fun. We usually don't go that in depth in the getting to know you questions, so the audience, I feel like, got a lot out of that. So next question is, what is something that you did not think you would like, but then you tried it and you did?
You're talking about food, right?
It doesn't have to be food. Like, it could be like,
because okay, if you're talking about food, there is virtually nothing that I have been not excited about trying.
Nice.
So my thing has been, like, I'm very adventurous with food. It's part of what I one of the things that I really appreciated about my wife when I met her. Very adventurous in food, so we tend to be very comfortable doing that, and so we have excitement with everything. Not necessarily we have preferences, but we like, it's not stuff we don't like. We have preferences, though, stuff we like more than other things. But we like everything.
Nice.
Geez, not necessarily food. I don't know. It was something that I've tried that I oh man, you know what, I honestly did not this is kind of weird, I bet you, but I did not ever think I would have kids.
Nice.
I never thought myself as a person who would like even kids, right? I have 4 daughters. 2 of them are adults now, they're lawyers. One of them is almost a lawyer. The other one is a lawyer. And then two of them are babies. And I have very much enjoyed having now multi-generations of daughters.
Nice.
And I did not think I would enjoy them as much as I did.
Nice. And I think sometimes that's like the entrepreneur mind. With some people that want to be entrepreneurs, they're thinking how much a bigger family is going to distract me, right? From trying to get what I want to get done. But actually it helps you. I think it helps you more having a family than it hinders you as an entrepreneur.
Right. Yeah. I do too. I think it helps a lot. Well, it also motivates you. You want to do stuff. You have to take care of someone. It also is an opportunity to teach. A lot of times they're very excited. You know, my wife, you know, she got to see this. As I told her, I said, watch what will happen. You know, she'll be much more excited about dealing with stuff like just me doing stuff and joining me doing stuff than playing with toys a lot of times. And so when our new daughters came, so the third one is going to be 2 on January 1st, New Year's Day.
Nice.
So she actually this morning, the first call I had was with one of my team members, and I was doing it from home, and she came over and I had to grab her. She sat on my lap because she wanted to be a part of that. And she did not want to play with her toys or anything. She wanted to be a part of that. And she actually sat there for, 20 some minutes on my lap, watching that and making some noise and being a little bit of a disturbance. But but even from that early, they enjoy being a part of it, and it's fun sort of teaching them because they'll ask, right?
Yeah, they get a learning experience that they'll never get in school.
Yeah, my older daughters, I said, hey, you know what? After I wrote my first book, and it totally surprised me. Became an Amazon bestseller, and I said to my daughters, hey, I have this book out, and they said, how even? I remember this comment on my text coming. How even? Because they didn't know I was writing a book to begin with. And so it was after it was published is when I told them. And then they came to me and they said, how do you go about doing that?
Wow.
And so I was like, I'm perfectly new to it. I always tell people, I have, as you can tell, I have a lot to say. I have all these stories that I come up with, but I have the attention span of a gerbil, so I would never be able to write a book. And so I did, and I said, wow, okay, even if I can write a book, then anyone can. So I sat there with my older daughters and I said, hey, this is the way I went about it. And I had these stories to tell, I had these things to say, and over time it became a lot. And so I put it in a book.
Nice.
And so, yeah. So yeah, I do agree with you. It helps. It's a big motivating factor. I think it helps with things. I don't find it to be a hindrance in the least.
Nice. Last question on the getting to know you front. Finish the sentence. In a perfect world.
Oh no. In a perfect world. In a perfect world. Okay. In a perfect world, I always feel terrible when someone's business fails. And I think in a perfect world, everyone would be able to at least get their business off the ground and every business doesn't need to be a Fortune 500 business, but I hate when I see people fail.
Yeah, because that was really their big. That's mostly like their big dream, and I have to have it fail.
They put a lot into it. A lot of times it's not just money. It's it's a dream. A lot of times it's a feeling of self-worth too. People put a lot into that, and I hate when it happens. I know, there are more altruistic things to come up with, climate
No,
this way and,
no,
poor people that way.
no, that was good. I like
But
that.
we're on a, we're talking business, and
Yep.
I really feel for people when that happens, and I every time I've seen it, including myself, of course, but every time I've seen it, I always say, geez, that's so unfortunate. I feel terrible. So
I think that's going to
I
segue
want.
into. I think that's going to segue into one of our questions too about how to
Mhm,
keep that from
mhm,
happening. So,
mhm.
so let's go ahead and proceed into that section. So, first of all, I know you have a book coming out soon, and it is about
Yes.
um, your product is not your business, but your business is your product. If I said that right.
That's actually the working title. Yeah.
Nice, nice. So, tell us a
So
little bit about that.
look, I sat there, and this is something I've said to people for a number of years, and I didn't have it in those words. And a number of years ago, I started saying it in those exact words. Your product is not your business, but your business is your product. And this new book that I'm in the process of writing, I sort of said, look, that's the title, but there's all these different little rules that I have that I'm going to put together, and it's going to address what hopefully we'll talk about later, which is the three major challenges I see with SMBs, common, like I see it over and over. But your product is not your business is your product. It's very important to me, and I think until you understand that, it's very difficult to make a business work. A lot of times when you go to people, and I say this, like I use as an example, professionals, service providers. When you say, oh, what do you do? You go to a doctor, what do you do? They describe to you, oh, I help heal cancer patients. I do this kind of treatment, right? That's the product they provide. That's the service they're providing. They define that as their business. Okay. It becomes the definition of their business. And they say, that's my business. That is not your business. That's the product. That's the service you're providing. Okay. But your business is all of it, right? Is how your staff is dealing with your patients, is all the different little things that you put together, how your office looks, what your tableside manner is. Do you do video calls with your patients? Do you put out a newsletter? Everything having to do with that is your business. It's not just sitting at a table with a patient for 20 minutes or whatever it is that you're doing, or performing whatever surgery. That's not it. And as an example of that, I always say, like a lot of times, a lot of these professionals, they go to different seminars, right? And they say, oh, this person's wildly successful at this. I'm going to go watch this person give that speech, and you sit there and go, but what's the real difference between you and that person? I mean, you as a doctor, you've gone to school. Somebody gave you a license to practice, which means they're considering you an expert in this field. You are considered officially by the government of the United States or whatever, California or whatever state you're in, as an expert by a governing board. And then you've gone to all kinds of continuing education. You've practiced this, 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week. You're practicing and sharpening your skills. So what makes that person better than you? It's everything else they do. Okay. It's everything else they do. It's the way they market themselves, the way they get the patients they do, the way they get the work they do, all of that, all the public relations that they have that put them on the stage. So you come and listen to them. All of that is what their business is and what your business should be. Conversely, your business is your product, right? Right? Unless you look at your business as the ultimate product you're providing the world, you again run a huge risk of failing, right? You don't maximize your chances of success. Why? Because then you're not looking at how your customer service is, right? One of the companies I partner up with, I mentioned before, we deal with companies a lot of times that have a distributor network and they do wholesaling of a consumer product. So when we first started partnering up, I said, yeah, so let's do this consumer direct to consumer relationship together. And they said, oh yeah, we're fine. Consumers already know our products. We're already in all these different stores, so we have brand recognition. People know our product. They come and shop it. So having a direct relationship with them is nothing. So what are you really providing me, right? And that was an example of not realizing that your business is your product, right? Here's why. I said, oh, okay, so you can then service a consumer. Yeah, we put up this website. We actually officially have put up our consumer website, not separate from their wholesale website. I said, oh, geez, we're gonna have to take that down right away. And they got kind of mad at me, but I said, okay, and I'll explain to you why, and this is for your own good. I said, I'm gonna put in an order right here, right now. And I started putting it, I want this much of that, I want 2 of those, I want 1 of this. And by the way, I want it tomorrow. And that's when they were stumped, right? And the reason was that they just, again, didn't realize all of the things that need to happen and what I as a consumer expect, right? I'm not expecting to just pick up a jar of food, right? I'm expecting that all of it is done right, right? The jar looks exactly right. What's inside of it tastes exactly right. It's backed up properly. If there's a problem with the product, I'm able to get it replaced. I'm able to get it timely. I'm able to all of those things, right? And if it's not done right, if any of it is not done right, then I'm going to go to someone else because you're not the only game in town, right? So very few times are you the only game in town, right? And even if we are the only game in town, usually somebody else comes and says, I can do that better. Mm-hmm. And then they do, right? So what happened in that situation, in one moment, they said, oh my God, because in their warehouse, they're used to sticking things on pallets. They're used to trucks coming to their warehouse and picking up stuff. They're not used to some consumer that says, I want 1 of those things handed to me, right? They have things in big, giant cases. They can't grab 1 thing out of it. They don't even have the personnel to do it, right? And then on top of it, what happens, and that thing goes and gets to a consumer. This thing is broken. It came like this. It came like that. It's lost. How do you deal with that? What happens? Who's picking up the phone? They didn't even have a quality control person. Like I'm sorry, a customer service person, right? And so what happens? Where do they call? Where does the consumer call when the problem comes? Because a problem will come, right? Right. So when you're looking at that, you're saying, okay, so your business is the product you're giving to the world. All of those things that you have to have as part of your business, right? As part of how you service a consumer, that's the product that you're giving to the world. So your business is your product. And you have to do every one of those things right. Or 1, your consumer is not going to be happy. And 2, somebody else is going to come and do it better than you. And they will do it better, and they'll get your customers from you, and they'll have a better business than you. So from that, I said, that there's so many parts to that. And then so many of my little, my personal rules that go into that. I said, I can write forever on this thing. So I sort of put that together and said, okay, that's going to be the basis. That's going to be the title of my book. But then from there flows all of this other stuff. And it also feeds into what I see SMBs, small and medium-sized businesses, in talking to thousands of them over the years, what I see are common areas of challenges. So that's where I came up with it. And hopefully one day it'll be finished and I'll come over here on your show and I'll say, it's done, Doug. That'd be awesome. But I'm writing it right now.
Awesome. All right. Well, I was just going to ask release date, but that's still TBD. So be on the lookout.
It's gonna be Q1 of 2023.
Okay, awesome. Well, we will have you back, even if it's just for like just the unveiling of hey, here's the
Here
book.
it is.
Yeah, exactly. So I had another. So what was going through my mind the whole time you were talking about that was how McDonald's was once the prime example of the best fast food restaurant, right? And then Chick-fil-A comes along and says, I'm going to do it better, right? You used to think probably nobody thought before that McDonald's could be beat, right?
No.
And then just like you said, someone, well, I could do that better.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what happens. But I mean, keep in mind though, McDonald's has managed to survive all of these things.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
At the same time, right? There's all these competitors came along, right? And they did a lot of things better. But McDonald's, what it also on McDonald's side, what McDonald's did was keep up, is say, okay, you know what, we're gonna do this and we're gonna do that, and they kept on kept on growing their brand, and so these things are what's really important. And by the way, how many people say, okay, Chick-fil-A's sandwich, that's a better sandwich than anything McDonald's makes? A lot of people do, right? But for whatever reason, McDonald's manages to have many thousands of stores open all over the world, and is a larger company. And it's because not necessarily, it goes back to this, it's not necessarily the taste. It's all of the other stuff that they do. And for Chick-fil-A on the same token, it's all of the stuff they do, even though they make a damn good sandwich, even though they make it just right, and people, even though they try to imitate it, they're not getting there, right? But even with all of that, Chick-fil-A would not be the success that it is without concentrating on all of those things, even though they have the best tasting sandwich there.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure there's been many an entrepreneur start a restaurant with the best dish in the world, but it failed because all the other components were missing.
Yeah, you could have the best product in the world I used to say if you put it on Mars, but I'll say Saturn since people are getting too close to Mars now. But if you put it on Saturn, no one's going to buy it. Right. So that just keep that in mind as you're thinking through your business, in my opinion, because if you're not doing that, you're certainly not maximizing your chances of success.
Right.
That's and likely you'll run into a brick wall, in my experience.
Nice. And then that's when they need to call someone like you to help them break through that brick wall.
Or just to console them, because I do have empathy.
Nice. So you alluded to it just a little bit ago. Much earlier on, we talked about business as failure, right? And how we feel for those people. But there are ways to avoid business failure. And if you can enlighten us on like 3 challenges that you see most small businesses go through, and how to address those.
Yeah. So the way I what I saw was patterns as I dealt with different businesses and different ways they approach things. I described that business. By the way, the business I was describing is a very robust business that it's a medium-sized business, but a significant, with a significant track record, significant customer following. At the same time, you see where they've misjudged certain things. So it's not just about being me and you, oh geez, I'm just starting my own business, I don't know that much. You're constantly in a state of learning. So even with them, as experienced as they were, as successful as they were, even with them, when they said, okay, we're going to try to have a direct-to-consumer relationship, they suddenly were at a loss. It happens, it's normal, and it happens to all of us. It happens to me all the time. But over time, what I noticed was that there are 3 major areas that SMBs face challenges, sometimes and for various reasons. The first is sales channels. Okay, they're either overutilizing or underutilizing, and I'll describe that. sales channels is something that's a little bit, a lot different today than it used to be. It used to be you go and open a brick and mortar store. That's what you do. And here's your customer base. Basically, there's a geographic area. And from there, you start growing, right? You know, how McDonald's started, right? They started servicing a geographic area. And then from there, they put restaurant 2 and restaurant 3 and restaurant 4. And they went from there. So that's completely changed, right? Especially if you're talking about consumer goods. There are now, you can just start today and right off the bat be on various sales channels. And that's an ever-growing thing, right? Because everyone who has eyeballs on their website, right, is basically sitting there and trying to create some way of selling products on it, right? YouTube is doing it, Facebook is doing it, Instagram's doing it. Every one of the social networks for sure are doing it, right? TikTok, every one of them. TikTok right now is putting out this thing where you can just shop right directly from their app. And so those are all individual sales channels and ones you can utilize from day one. Okay, this was not the case, 30 years ago or 25 years ago or 20 years ago, right? So what happens is a lot of SMBs start and they overutilize and underutilize. What do I say? Why do I say that? Overutilize in that they are on the wrong sales channels for their business at that time. It may be right later on, but not today. And not enough on the right sales channels for their business at that time, right? They may be even on those sales channels, but not enough. They're not focusing enough on them, or they're not on them altogether. So that's one area that's a challenge, which I focus on whenever I get involved with the business. Second area, they're overly focused, in my opinion, generally on new customer acquisition. New customer acquisition is incredibly important. It is important to every business, almost regardless of maturity. I mean, you look at Netflix. Every time they don't gain enough subscribers, their stock falls, right? So incredibly important. But at the same time, when I say they're overly focused on it, it means what I'm trying to say is they're not enough focused on their current customer base, right? And that's where you get your upsells, your cross sells, your subscriptions, your monthly recurring revenues, right? Your MRRs, right? And those are the best marketing dollars you can spend, right? Those are, and every large business knows this. Marketing to current customers is a lot cheaper than spending money on getting new ones. So that's a big area of challenge. And over, when I see small businesses, I see that either they are completely not focusing on that and only focusing on new customers, or they're just not, they've never put together the products to be able to service the customers, or not enough of that where they could be taking advantage of them. And then the third area is something I alluded to with that company. Again, the example I gave, where they were completely clueless as to their logistics. How do you get this stuff to that individual customer, right? When you're used to having, again, incredibly successful, huge business, but they're used to having trucks pull up at their dock over there and big forklifts fill up those trucks, and then those trucks leave. And then that customer orders again next month or 2 weeks from now, or 2 months from now, but they have a regular schedule. They come up, and they get to plan all of these things. It's not this thing where the customer comes and says, today I want this, tomorrow I want that, and have it to me, blah, 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 So logistics is where they were, one of the areas where they were really, really misjudging what they were doing. Also, I throw in there, when I'm talking with SMBs, their supply chains, I throw it in together with logistics, because, a lot of times it's so interrelated that it goes in the same bucket. But just today, right before we got on, I was talking to a small business owner who was describing misjudging exactly on that issue, both where they were sourcing some of their products, and then also how they were going to get them to the customer. It was one of their biggest challenges that cost them a whole lot. So yeah, those are the three areas that I generally see. And as soon as I talk to a small business owner, I'm immediately asking these questions. Where are you selling? What are you doing? What's happening with your current customer? Would you have an email list? Do you have this? Do you have that? What exactly are you doing there? Like time and again, like if you see, somebody will come and say, well, I'm doing this on Instagram, but blah, blah, blah on Instagram. Okay, well, Instagram, what exactly are you doing? And, who did why did you start on Instagram? Well, but, my friend who did like 10 years ago, started a business, blah, blah, blah. 10 years ago, Instagram and today's Instagram, different. I mean, might as well just be doing a different company. Totally different in terms of how you run a business. So a lot of times you have to sit there and say, okay, well, what is the plan here? What are we doing? How about if we did this? What do you think about that? And then focusing, if you focus on those three areas, I think you start really maximizing the chances of success again. And that's my desire, basically.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I go back to your second point about taking care of current customers, not just upselling them, cross-selling them, but focusing on retention, right? Because especially if you have something that's a monthly recurring or something like that, where they're going to come back and pay you again, having a strong retention policy, or not policy, but procedure in place, it's probably very, very key.
Yeah, I'll use you as an example, right? I get, from the first time we met, right? I'm getting regular emails from you, different types of offerings, right? Then, you introduce me to your podcast guests. You give me different thoughts. I'm constantly in contact with you. You've kept in contact, and it's stuff that I'm like, oh, hey, Doug is doing this, or Doug said this. I'm thinking you invited me to your Facebook group, right? And I was like, oh, that's, you have all of these things that are a constant thing where you're keeping in touch with people. When you look at different businesses, small businesses, that piece a lot of times is missing, that communication, and properly doing that communication, right? Because they'll even when they're doing it, a lot of times it's like they're sending email blasts like constantly, oh, sell this, sell that, buy this, buy that, keep giving me money, give me money, give me money. That's what it sounds like, right? And I say, well, on emails, geez, email's kind of personal. When someone gives you that email address, right, they're kind of welcoming you in their home, right? It's sort of kind of that way, right? We have other ways that people contact us, especially now with all the social media out there. People have different ways of seeing each other and stuff. When the email comes, that's, hang on, and so respecting that. So I like, I get an email from Doug. I'm like, okay, it's a welcome email, right? In my mind, I'm like, okay, yeah, I want to get that email from Doug. But, properly dealing with your customers is incredibly important. And so there's a lot of things there, and it's a lot of times missed. And it's hard to do. If you're running a small business, there's only so much you can concentrate on, So
awesome. Thank you so much for that. And kind of alluded to it, you and I have been in contact, and we have something that we're working on together that's coming out. This is kind of a big reveal right here on the podcast, because only people in a certain number of people even know about this as of yet. We are working on a book together. Shawn is providing a chapter in the Dear Younger Me, I Wish You Knew book. And I'm very excited about it. I'm sure you're very excited about it as well. So
I am.
Be on the lookout for that. Basically, it's going to be a series of letters of entrepreneurs basically telling their younger selves whatever they want to say. Some people it'll just be a reflection. It's up to the author. It'll just be a reflection on where they are now compared to where they were, or it might have been advice that they would have which they would have took then to where they are now. So be on the lookout for that. No, once again, a TBD release date on that, but we are expecting Q1 on that book as well.
Yeah. Well, it'll be a lot of fun for me, because there's a lot of stuff I want to say to my younger self. And hopefully I'm hoping, and it's the whole point of the book is sort of, stuff that we would want to say to our younger self that hopefully would be helpful to other people, right? And helping them avoid, some of the mistakes that, certainly I've made. So
Yeah, even I would recommend it for not only new entrepreneurs, but seasoned entrepreneurs as well, because I think it'll be just good reflection for them, or maybe they're in a spot where someone was before, and it's kind of that's in the book, and they can kind of get that useful knowledge that that person went through to help them go through to the next step.
Doug, is what I was saying earlier is like I find myself in this situation all the time, right? And so where there's something new that you learn. There's some pitfall that you would have faced that you avoid. And yeah, I agree with you very much.
Yeah, so be on the lookout for that. Shawn, any parting words for first of all, what do you have to share with the people? Is there any place that they can go to find out more about you? Of course, you got the new book coming up.
Oh, you know what? Any one of your audience, this is the book that came out that made the bestseller list. I'm happy to send it to them for free.
Nice.
And
I have that book.
They can connect with me. And then they can connect with me on connect with Shawn, SHAWN, connectwithshawn.com or eplaybooks.com. Write me, connect with me, and hopefully we can have a conversation.
Yeah, if your business has hit that brick wall that we've kind of talked about, you should definitely be connecting with Shawn, because he can help you either smash through it or go around it.
Hopefully.
So any parting words for our entrepreneurs?
I hate to say this, but it's kind of a repeat of things you hear from people. But in today's economy, things are kind of not looking that great, interest rates are up, and people are laying off. Different companies are laying off people. I just what I want is there's always a way. There's opportunity in everything, in every situation. And so always be looking. I always use that now. I always use COVID as an example, but always be looking for opportunity in even the worst of times, because it exists. And those that find it are the ones that take advantage of it and prosper through all of those tough times. So keep on thinking, keep your spirits up, and keep your attention together and look for those opportunities.
Yes. Go forward in the face of fear. So many successful companies have come out of downturns.
Yes, absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much, Shawn. And until next time, entrepreneurs, keep moving forward.